Hi guys, it's Amy, and you have found Amy Loves Crochet. Thank you so much for clicking on my videos. I really do appreciate your time. I've got one kind of follow-up to share with you before I jump into the main meat of today's video. And this has to do with some yarn that I purchased at a fiber event that was dyed. And I appreciated the colors very much, but maybe not so much the fiber once I started working with it. Now this is what I've got left of, what was it called? Wool of the Andes. It was from Knit Picks, and I had purchased some of my own that I dyed and didn't care for it, and then went to this fiber event and was all in love with the colors and didn't think that that was the same fiber that I didn't like. So I started working with it to make a scarf and thought it's way too scratchy for a scarf. I don't want this around my neck. So I had to do something different. I had to flip my thought process and come up with something different. So here's where I'm at. I made a little crossbody bag. So what you saw me initially start with was the yarn started at the blue and it worked its way up and started to get lighter and lighter. Now I did this pattern. I made a tutorial for this pattern. It's called the boxed cluster stitch. So you can see here, this was such a fail to choose this fabric or this colorway for this pattern because you just lose it. But here you'll see, I can't even see it. Here you see some rows of all double crochets, and then there's some rows where there's a skip one, chain one, double crochet, and then you'll see these boxed clusters. So we've got a couple of double crochets and then you skip one and you make this cluster. And so if you want to check that out, my tutorial, I'll go ahead and link that down below. But I just thought that you've got to kind of use that pattern with like a solid color yarn because it's just too much going on. You miss it. You can't see anything happening. So I decided to go ahead and make this into a little crossbody bag. Now, I had been doing some other bags, and I think I made this a little bit too wide for this project, but it is what it is. So crossbody bag, easy enough to work with, and then I decided I wanted to make a little flap for it. A lot of the other crossbody bags I just make that you just, can reach your hand down into it or whatever, but I decided I kind of wanted to make this one a little bit different. So I continued on with the color changing aspect. This is where the color went next after I was done with my strap. All that blue kind of tends to fade out and it goes into this darker kind of brown that will then eventually go into the black. So what I did when I was done with the bag and the handle, I decided to tie on here and start working it up with the same color that I was at, but then I wanted that to sort of stand out a little bit. So I grabbed black from the outside of the cake and just outlined that real quick to make a little flap. I don't know if I want to put a button on it or just leave it like that, but I don't want this to be flirty. I want to be able to tack the corners into a stiffer corner. I don't like it being all floopy like that. Maybe that'll just work itself out over time. I don't know. So at least that's done. I've got a whole nother hank of it. So Kristen, if you haven't gotten started with your yarn yet, this is what it's going to kind of look like as far as the color changing. I think that they were right on par with each other for that. And yeah, you can make something fun with your Halloween color yarn as well. Okay, so jumping into the project notes. Now, I have a video out for when I made this hat before. This is the Lavender Kisses hat by Moogly. And I made it, I don't remember how long ago I made it, but even then I had, like just one skein of a colorway. I had two different colorways if I'm not mistaken. And so I made some hats and I talk about changing the hook size and enjoying different sizes of hats when I made it before. Now, what I've got here is about 3 hanks. I had to get into a little bit of this other hank just for the last row of the brim. Otherwise, what I'm about to show you is just made up of 3 hanks. If you've got 3 hanks of this Facets yarn, you can do all of this too. So each of these is 279 yards, and I use different hooks with all of it. It's a 4-weight acrylic, 100% acrylic, and it's a suggested 6mm hook to use with it. Now, if you're not familiar with this yarn, it is similar to Unforgettable by Red Heart and Landscapes by Lion Brand. This is our Loops and Threads version. It's called Facets, and it's roving. So sometimes it is bigger than other times. And I was trying to see one right on the outside here where you might be able to see that. So it's not a pattern. I mean, it's not a yarn that you want to use where all your stitches are going to be really tight and close together, because the yarn size changes in and out. So it's really, you know, you can really see it if the stitches are all lined up right next to each other. So the patterns that I found, the Lavender Kisses, there's some loosey-goosiness to it because you do some trebles and you go way up in your hook size. So it allows for that difference in yarn weight a little bit better. So here's an example of that roving factor. You're going to have some where it's thick, like this is thick and blown out, and then other times where it's super wound, super tight like this, and it stays like in its little round format. So if that's something that is bothersome to you, this may not be the right yarn for you. It comes in so many different colors, and the color changing is so beautifully, you know, it comes out so beautiful. I look past the roving different size, you know, points of the yarn. So when I picked up this hank of yarn, or the skein of yarn, to try to use it after I purchased this lot off of eBay. So I've got 5 of these, and this colorway is called Lollipop. You can see all the beautiful oranges and pinks and purples and like this beige that all just keeps flowing together. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And I have also this colorway, you can see it just here. And then this one here is like, it's called Flame. It's red and yellows. So I got 5 skeins of this. What am I going to do? I know I can work up a couple of hats out of one pattern, one hank, if my numbers and my hook sizes and everything is just right. So depending on you and how your tension might be, that might change up a little bit. But so the first thing I did was, and if you know me at all, you know that sometimes I'll just grab a pattern to work on later based on what the project looks like. So I saw this beautiful picture of this hat, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that pattern and work this Facets yarn with it. And once I got started working with it, it's just straight up double crochets all the way through, and it bored the socks off of me. So I had to find other stuff to do in the meantime. But here is that hat. So you can see you just kind of start as a standard top, increases. Now the next point in my being bored with this hat is that you get up to 72 stitches. And some hats, only have 60 stitches, and other hats end up with 72. Well, when you're going in the round and you got 72 stitches to do, and they're all double crochets, again, bored out of my mind. One of the other things I'll go ahead and show you is that I have a seamless round pattern that I like to do. And so sometimes you don't see the seam. It truly is a seamless pattern. But because this yarn comes and goes, both the colorway and the thickness of the yarn, I did my seamless, and you can still see the seam. So I think if you didn't do this and you just did a straight, chain 3 and start your next round, you're still going to see a seam either way. But this one kind of steps down and down and down. So my method, maybe I'll show you in a tutorial someday, but what you do when you come up to your next round, when you're going to grow your next row up, you chain 2, and then you skip a stitch and start your round that way. And then when you go back in to do your final stitches in your skipped stitch, it's supposed to hide that. So if this was a solid color yarn, you would never ever see that. You only see that because the color changes and they're not lined up. So like, see where the pink comes across? Like here was where I skipped 2 stitches and go over, or you know, you skip a stitch and you go over. So now your pink isn't necessarily like right here. It's not until over here. So I don't know if that's the right technique to use with the color changing, but then you get to the bottom and you just do your front post, back post alternating to create that little ribbing. So this was the hat. Here, I'll show you. Put this one on first. Put that seam in the back. Oh, and yes, I'm still congested beyond. I can't stand it. So it's cute. It's nice. Whatever. You know, I wanted a slouchy out of it. I want it loosey-goosey, but I don't know if doing the solid double stitches or double crochet stitches is really my preference for this yarn. So I will hold this one up since I'm not wearing it any longer. This was, I don't remember the colorway on this. I made it a while ago, but I'll link my video where I talk about the two. I think it's called Meadow. I think it was called Meadow. But so yeah, so here upside down, here's the stitch that we do for the Lavender Kisses hat, the slouchy. You do offsetting rows of 3 double crochet clusters and then crossovers with trebles. So it does work up very quickly. I did 2 of these yesterday in the morning, I think, just rather quickly. And then again, your standard front post, back post double crochets for your ribbing of your hat. So with this one, just straight double crochets, as you can see. I like the way the colors were changing and stuff, but it was just boring for me. I really enjoyed making the Lavender Kisses hat much more. So with that one here, I'll put this on first because my hair, this one's super loosey-goosey. I get woo, woo, woo. So this one, I had these 2 hooks with it. So I think I did the main body of the hat in a 5mm and then the brim in my 4mm because those hooks were sitting with that hat. So then this one I made, the pattern calls for a 9mm for the main body of the hat, and you'll see in my other video that I changed it up a couple of different times. So of course I did it with this one as well. So for the body of the hat on this one, I came down to an 8mm. And then for the ribbing of the brim here, I came down to a J hook. And what I actually used, this was a set from my mom. She has them go, I think I've got now hers, an H all the way up to a Q maybe. And so there are these beautiful wooden hooks you can see here. And each of the tops have a different design. Their little top piece here is different on each of them. But you have to be able to see that a J has been scratched in. This is how each of the hooks is labeled, just like with that little scratching up at the top. So I really have to look for those. But I was downstairs and too lazy to come up to get another hook because, like I said, I had so many projects here waiting to film. My filming time has not been my own lately. Is it ever, really? And so I had all these projects up here to share with you, and I kept all the hooks that I used with the projects so that I could tell you what I used. And then I was out of J hook and I needed it and I was in the basement. So I grabbed this one. I miss my mom. I love using her hooks once in a while. These do get kind of caught up in the yarn and stuff if you're not paying attention. So I don't always like to use these, but in this case I did. So that was the hooks that I used on this one, the 8mm for the main and then a 6mm for the brim. So for this next one, and that one's got quite a bit. That one's super long, as you can see. It's super long. You've got a lot of extra slouch in here. So then for this next one, let's see what hooks I used. This one's a little bit smaller, a little bit snugger. I like that. It kind of, there's not a whole lot in here at all. This one, I did an extra row of, did I? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then I started the brim. What did I do with this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then the brim. I think this one, let me see what this one is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then the brim. So this is the way the pattern tells you to do it. I made extra rows on those to make them slouchier, even, emphasize that slouch a little more. But this one is just kind of to my head. I didn't create any extra rows, and I didn't use as big a hook as she does. So for this one, for the body, I used a 7, and then for the brim, I used a 5.5. So if you like, this one kind of fits a little bit more like a skull cap would, with a little bit of space in here. And the airiness really allows your head to breathe a little more. So I know that there are seasons when, it's cold and you want full coverage for your hat. But other times of the year, you're going to want just a little bit of breathability in there, So I think of all of the, if you watch my other video, I call it a mama bear, a papa bear, and a baby bear for the different sizes. And I call out a favorite. But, if you're not looking for a slouch hat and you just want like a skull cap fitting cap, I like this pattern very much. Lavender Kisses, Moogly, Tamara Kelly, she does a great tutorial. And again, I, kind of went down with my hooks. So the main body of this one's a 7 and the brim was a 5.5. And you can possibly get 2 of these. Let me weigh this one and see how much it is. Hold on. Yeah, this only weighs 40 grams, and these are 100-gram balls. So if you did it in this count, like the pattern count, and then come down to a 7mm if you've got one for the body of the hat and a 5.5 for the brim, you can get 2 hats out of 1 skein of yarn. So, and at, $5 or $6 a skein, I think that's awesome. 2 hats for that. Let me get my dogs. Hold on. Alrighty, so the last thing I have to share with you from this grouping is a beautiful shawl that I made. And forgive me, I do not have the name of the shawl written down. I'll have to fill it in here. But this is just under 2 hanks of the Facets yarn. It's about 175 grams. So these are 100-gram balls. So we're just under 2 balls on this. But look how pretty. It's really just a very basic pattern. You do a V-stitch, and then the next round you do a single crochet and 3 chains and a single crochet back into the V-stitches. So you just build on those all the way up. And then you just finish your row on the chain. You finish your repeat on the chain row so that you've got, it kind of is like a little picot, when you do 3 chains and then single back into the base of your chain. They kind of look like little picots along the bottom there. Gives it a nice little bubbly bottom. But yeah, so trying to get through different, so this is one that is sort of interesting to me. I think that the color changes happen so crazy like that it doesn't really matter. But when I was working, when I finished my first ball of yarn, I thought about, what color am I attaching next? Because if this was with a standard color changing yarn, you might try to color control to start over at the next repeat color so that your color from start to the end of your project has that same flow of color rotation. But this was just so crazy, and it's kind of hard to grab that out. And I don't think that you can tell one way or the other where one ball stopped and where the next ball began. So beautiful, beautiful size. It's not too big. It's not too small. I think it's a little small for a shawlette, but where you're just wearing it on the front. But otherwise, I think it's a great size. It was fun to work with. Just get a little simple little pattern that I could do while I was watching TV and stuff. So I quite enjoyed this yarn. I've got 2 more, almost 2 full skeins of it left. Like I said, I had to get into another skein just to do the final border. It calls for 3, the Lavender Kisses beanie, slouchie, calls for 3 rows of your front post, back post double crochets to make your ribbing here. And so, like I said, I had to break into 1 skein just to do that final row. So it's not very much. But yeah, a couple of different patterns made with this yarn, show the different ways that the colorway might play out. These 2 are the same pattern, but otherwise we got 3 different patterns here going on. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing those. If you've got, 1 skein of this in your stash. You could get 2 hats out of it, like I said. Very, very nice little pattern. So I enjoyed this yarn very much. The 3 are virtually interchangeable. The Facets from Loops and Threads, the Unforgettable by Red Heart, or the Landscapes by Lion Brand. If you've got any one of those skeins, you can do 2 hats for 1 skein. So at least the others, I don't know what their yardage is, if it's the same as these. The yarn itself is the same. I just don't know about how much you get in a skein. So, all right, guys. Don't be afraid to go back over a pattern that you've already made in the past. You know, it's not like reinventing the wheel where you got to try something new each and every time. You know, when I did this, the Lavender Kisses, I watched the tutorial again just to put myself back on track with it. And then I decided to watch my own video again, which was really weird, just to see what tips and tricks I gave to you guys that I would, you know, follow myself as well for this, making this new round of hats. And I'm glad I did. It was, as weird as it was very enjoyable to see my own review of the yarn, that I agree with it still or not, you know. So anyway, all right, guys, thank you so much for sitting with me today. I always appreciate your time. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and please do come back and see me again. Thank you. Bye-bye.